Warning, I'm gonna be pretty hard on the M2 today, and honestly, it's well deserved. I'm gonna be talking about reasons why you should not buy the new 2023 G87 M2. To be fair, I did make a video on positive things about this car, so if you guys want to see that video, I'll have it linked down in the video's description. Just like the previous video, let's start off with the exterior, and God doesn't need some work. I gotta start off with the front end. Unfortunately, there's just so much to talk about. One thing that not a lot of people are talking about in a negative way are the headlights. Sure, they're not the worst looking thing in the front of the M2, but the traditional dual projector, dual lights for BMWs is now gone, and now you got a single projector, which I'm not a massive fan. I'm sure it'll grow on me pretty soon. But this section right below this part of the headlight, I cannot get used to. It's not a vent. It doesn't have daytime running light strips. It serves no purpose. It's just there, I think, to make it look different from the M240i, where the bumper actually follows the design of the headlight. The Porsche-like massive air ducts, the squared ones on each side of the bumper, they don't look very good, at least not in my opinion, but it's something I can probably get over and used to. But the one thing I cannot get used to is the middle bottom portion of the front bumper. Something that everybody has covered online, and everybody's 100% correct. The easiest way to describe this section of the front of the car is it looks unfinished. Like the sensors for parking could have been integrated better, and instead of having them just awkwardly sticking out of that part of the bumper. And while these sensors on the sides don't look good neither, they kind of hide a little bit better than those. And for whatever reason, BMW decided to push that portion back compared to the rest of the bumper, and I don't understand why. It doesn't flow very well. I mean, technically speaking, this is just a cover, and I don't even think it's part of the entire bumper. The bumper goes like this and like that, and then they use a cover that's finished in gloss black. But just look at it from this angle. It just doesn't seem like it lines up correctly because it's pushed in. I don't understand that. This portion here is also not visually appealing. There's no mesh. There's nothing there, just these wide, very large openings. Again, it just seems unfinished, almost like the guys at BMW ran out of time and just kind of rushed the car out to production without finishing the rest of it. Like, I mean, BMW kind of gave you a guard for like the heat exchanger and the cooling stuff here, but then the oil cooler is like exposed. And this surprisingly catches a bunch of junk. I drove the car 18 hours from Rhode Island to Florida, and I had to really go in there and clean this up. It was so much stuff that got trapped in there. Listen guys, I'm not the type of guy to argue with the BMW engineers as to why they left that so open and exposed. Maybe there's a reason for cooling, aerodynamics, I don't know. But again, it just feels unfinished. I guess the solution here would be to either paint match this bottom section body color, or to, I don't know, make a custom part where it would bring this piece out a little bit further so it lines up with the sides of the bumper. The one thing that confused the hell out of me when BMW first revealed this car for the public to see was that unlike almost every other M car that has ever been released by them, this one does not have the M badging on the front fenders. It doesn't have that grille or that vent or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't even have the side marker. It's just a plain fender. Sure, it looks pretty dope because it's boxed up and it's almost like a factory wide body, but how cool would it have been if they would have just finished it up and added that badge and that grille? My guess is that there are probably companies out there already making stuff to fix that, maybe like a replacement fender or some sort of a grille that you can install into the factory one. Who knows? That's a big miss on BMW. Moving on to the rear of the car, which is probably my least favorite angle of the new M2 because of one specific reason. That part and that part. Because of the design of the diffuser and the color is gloss black, the corners of the rear bumper are like pointy and triangular, which make it look like some sort of a UFO. And then you have this section here, which is legit an exclamation point. The reflector with the parking sensor. It's almost like BMW went out of their way just to focus on this area and make it pop for everybody to see, and I don't understand why. Like, I get adding the reflector. I mean, that's a US thing. By law, we have to have it. But why make the surrounding area of that section three-dimensional and then you highlight that area with gloss black so it pops? It just does not look good. It's 100% the first thing people see when they look at the rear of the car. Not the taillights, not the cool looking trunk, not the diffuser, not the nice quad tips on the exhaust. That section. And you either really hate it or you somewhat like it. I don't think anybody really likes it. The easiest way to fix a lot of the exterior like shortcomings that I just talked about is just to get the car in sapphire black. Guess what? You won't be able to see any of those imperfections. It'll just flow in smoothly. The last negative thing I'll talk about the exterior, which is kind of a hit or miss because I think a lot of people actually like it or some people don't mind it, are the fact that the wheels are different sizes in the back compared to the front. 20-inch thinner tires, 19-inch thicker tires. So diameter wise, they should match, but they just don't look symmetrical. That said, the BMW M division has shared why they decided to go with this particular setup. They made a very nice educational video on their YouTube channel, and it makes total sense, and I don't blame them for doing it. I just like symmetrical wheels. So when I upgrade the wheels, they're definitely all gonna be the same size. I'll quickly also mention that these wheels are cast, not forged, not hybrid forged, cast, meaning that they are very heavy. And I'm not just saying that because everyone else is saying the same. I actually took the rear wheel off and oh my God, the weight was ridiculous. Putting them back on was even worse because you have to line them up with the bolt holes. Seems like a major miss by BMW, as it would be an easy way to shave some weight on a car that's already pretty heavy. Moving on to performance. To be honest, there's not a lot of negatives to say about performance, but if I had to nitpick, I guess we'll start with the typical new car configuration where you're just not gonna feel as much compared to an older BMW. Going fast doesn't really feel all that fast. Hard acceleration doesn't really put you back into the seat. The electric steering with this car is pretty spot on and close to hydraulic, but it's just not the same. But let's be totally honest, guys. The feel with newer cars is something we're gonna have to get used to. Technology gets better, the installation gets better. There's just a lot more things equipped into cars now. They're a lot bigger. The suspension is much smoother. Newer cars, no matter how sporty they are always just gonna feel less compared to older cars. But there's definitely one thing that is definitely a negative about the performance of this car, and I'm not sure if it applies only to the 6-speed manual or if it also applies to the 8-speed automatic, which I haven't drove yet. But there's turbo lag initially when you floor this car, especially when you're on third or higher gears. I don't know if part of the reason is because the M2 is slightly detuned compared to the M3 and an M4. I've had other people comment in previous videos saying that stricter EPA laws made BMW make these gears longer. I'm not sure, but it's definitely there, and I'll show you guys right now. All right, fourth gear, 3,000 RPM, and punch it, lag, and there's the boost. Once it's in boost and in the power band, it is very, very fast. It's just that initial hesitation that has me a little bit confused, especially on a car that has a twin turbocharged setup. So here's a nice feature that I found, which measures the engine oil temperature and the boost that you're making. If it's accurate at all, they should be able to demonstrate and visually show us the turbo lag. All right, so fourth gear, 3,000 RPM. Let's see, and I'm gonna punch it now. Peaks at 16 PSI. But yeah, you saw that, it's not very fast. For a person like me, it's not gonna be an issue for too long. Nothing a tune can't fix. I'm just surprised. A twin turbocharged BMW engine that has that lag, it's not much, but it's enough to notice. Let's go ahead and talk about the interior. I spoke very highly of it in the previous video. This is gonna come off as extremely nitpicky, because it kind of is, but I have to mention it because it's something that I have to deal with every day. And that is these buttons here for the iDrive control. Unlike the buttons here on the left-hand side of the center console, they actually feel like buttons and they sound like buttons when you press them. There's a significant travel that gives you confirmation that you actually pressed it correctly. These buttons for the iDrive controls are not the same, and BMW decided to do something else, which literally has me confused. Button travel is pretty much non-existent. There's no audible feedback that you can really hear or feel, to be honest. Originally, I thought that these were like touch-sensitive buttons and noticed that that really doesn't do anything. You actually have to press it, but there's little to no indication that you actually pressed it until you see something change in the display, which I don't understand because the buttons on the side here are so good. Why change it up here in the center? You'll be driving trying to mess around with these buttons, and sometimes you'll get the menu that you're looking for, the shortcut, and sometimes nothing happens and you're trying to figure out how to press them correctly. Here, listen. Right? There's travel. You can hear it. You can feel it. Check this one out. No travel. Small sound indication, but no real feedback. The iDrive knob, on the other hand, is fine. Plenty of feedback. Presses just like a button. It's good. I just don't understand these right here. Again, kind of nitpicky, but I figured I'd mention it since nobody's really talking about it, and sometimes when I'm driving it kind of frustrates me, so I figured I'd mention it for those of you guys that are as picky as I am. Here's one thing I know a lot of you guys will not like, and that is the climate controls. They're built into the screen, guys. There are no physical buttons. Well, you do have 2 climate control buttons, but it's mainly just for the defrost of the front and the rear windshield, and those are physical buttons. But the controls that you guys are normally going to be using on a day-to-day trip are built into the screen. We need those to be physical buttons. This is the one feature that I don't agree with modern cars. The only positive thing to the climate control, despite it being inside of the iDrive screen, is that no matter what app or setting you're at, you still have access to the climate control right here in the bottom section, and the actual temperature here on both sides for the driver and the passenger. So no matter where you're at on the iDrive display, settings or apps or anything like that, notice how the climate menu still stays there. So I mean, that's pretty cool, but I still rather have it somewhere here, physical buttons, physical dials. The next negative thing I'll talk about is all the features and options you have with the display. That kind of sounds like a positive thing to most of you guys, but when you're trying to pinpoint a certain menu, option, or app, it can get very overwhelming, right? Click here to look at the options in the apps, and instead of having everything confined into like one settings tab where you can, I guess, find things in that specific section, no, everything's pretty much spread out and separated to the point where you have to physically start reading these icons if you just get the car, because you won't be familiar with a lot of it. When you're looking for a specific menu, it's almost better to just use your voice to have the BMW assistant find it for you than you having to individually read and keep pressing settings, looking for whatever the hell you're looking for and not finding it. So it's very cluttered in that aspect, especially when you get to these apps and settings right here. I guess this is all digital, so it can be updated and maybe put together better in the future, but as it stands now, it's very cluttered. How I've been able to combat this is it allows you to kind of drag apps and move it up to a certain section. So the ones that I use the most, I'll just keep them up top right here. The other thing that I pretty much talked about in my driving impressions video is like the driving assistance, like the safety features. Like disabling some of these safety features can get pretty annoying, because let's say, you know, for lane departure warning, on the submenu right below it says steering intervention, which is very annoying when you're driving, because if you're anywhere close to like the road line, it will yank you into the middle of the line whether you want it or not, in a very aggressive manner. Let's say I wanted to deactivate that. Well, the problem is every time you turn off the car and turn it back on, guess what? It gets enabled again. So most likely you'll forget, and then it'll start yanking you into the lane again, and then you realize you have to go back into these menus and then disable it, right? Which that should just be an option that if I click off, I no longer have to do it. And if I wanted to enable it, I would just have to go in there and enable it. But no, it resets every single time. Another way to deactivate all those safety features is to go into M mode. Once you go into M mode, then you can go from road, which has all the driver assistance systems available, to sport. And that automatically pretty much deactivates a lot of the safety features. If you go into track mode, it'll completely deactivate everything. But just like deactivating that one option that I was showing you guys for steering intervention, you have to do this every time you start the car. So I wish you can just select sport and it would stay like that. It's an extra step, guys. Every time you get into the car, M mode, go to sport. Unless, of course, you want all the safety features and they're not bothering you, then disregard. The last negative thing that I'll say about the interior of the car have to do with the carbon bucket seats, which I absolutely adore. Unlike the G80 M3 and the G82 M4, BMW does not allow you to individually option the carbon bucket seats for the M2. They force you to get a very expensive carbon package to get these seats. So you get them in a bundle, but you can't get them separately. And because of that, these seats pretty much cost $9,100 when optioning out this car. I guess if you want everything that's in the carbon package, then it kind of makes sense, because you get a bit of a discount. You'll get the carbon roof, you get the carbon fiber interior trim, and then you get the bucket seats. But let's say for some strange or rare reason, you're the type of person that wants a sunroof on the car. Well, you can't get the carbon bucket seats if you want the sunroof, because you have to get the carbon roof to get the bucket seats. And if you wanted a different interior trim that's not carbon fiber, then you also can't get the bucket seats. It's an option that is bundled in, and you have to get them all together. With that package, you also get your M2's top speed increased, and you get a track day at the M Performance Center, which I guess makes sense if you want all of that stuff, right? You get a bit of a discount, you bundle it in. But let's say you just wanted to get the carbon seats, well, you're kind of forced to pay that high price tag of $9,100, which kind of sucks. The price point is another thing that might scare you away from buying one of these. Price point starts at around $62,000. Sure, it's more affordable than the M3 and M4 by around $12,000, but if you compare it to when the M2 first came out back in 2016, it's nearly $10,000 more. And it's $3,000 more than the M2 competition that came out years later, which came equipped with the S55. Throw in the carbon package and you'll be paying more than $70,000 for a G87 M2.
No thanks, I choose life.
Now that you guys watched me talk really bad about this car, here's what you guys should do next. Watch the video that's on screen right now. It's on positive things about the new G87 M2 and why you should buy one. Also, make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed it. It really does help with the channel. Subscribe for more M2 content. And as always, thanks for watching. Till next time.